everybody, welcome back to Steph's Movies and Music. I am, of course, your host, Steph. Today we are here to talk about the band Warrant and their most recent concert, at least at the time of recording. The biggest things we're going to be talking about in this video is, of course, how they sounded, and also the set list of the concert. I believe it's the same set list throughout the entire tour, I'm pretty sure. And we'll talk a little bit about their openers, which were the Bullet Boys, at least in this case. I'm not sure if they have other openers throughout the tour or not, but in this particular concert, it was the Bullet Boys. We're also going to talk about one of their songs in particular that may or may not have aged like sour milk. Now, this is the first concert review in a while that I'm covering that I'm not just talking about like a particular solo artist. I'm actually talking about a band this time. And so before I address the other things that I just mentioned, I think it's important that I mention who's in the band exactly. Starting with Eric Turner, who's on guitar. I believe he's more of a rhythm guitarist, but he also does some lead guitar stuff. He's been in the band since 1984. He's actually one of two original founding members still left in the band. The other one being Jerry Dixon on bass. We have Steven Sweet on drums. He joined the band, I believe, in 1986, but then he I don't think he got fired, but he quit somewhere like in the mid 90s, 94, 95, and then he joined again in, I believe, 2004, and he's been with them ever since. And so technically he's not an original member because he did join a couple years later after the band was already formed, but he's on the debut album, and he's on pretty much, I believe, every single album that they ever recorded. So he's basically original. I mean, he's definitely a long-time, significant member, practically original. The same with the next guy, Joey Allen, who's on lead guitar. He joined in 87, he left in 94, and he came back in 04. Pretty much the same thing as Steven Sweet, basically. He's a significant member, basically original. It'd be not super fair to hold the fact that he's not original against him. Which, of course, unfortunately can't be the same for their lead singer, who is Robert Mason, who, to his own credit, has been affiliated with a lot of other hard rock and hair metal type of bands. Probably the most notable one being Lynch Mob. The lead singer, Robert Mason, is, I think, 60 years old himself, and he sounds really good, especially when you consider that he's 60 years old. He's not exactly a dead ringer for Janie Lane. Nobody ever will be, probably, but he's pretty darn close, I have to say. He looks the part as well. He's got the energy for it. I was really impressed with him, actually. Now, this might be nitpicking a little bit, but it seemed like he was kind of coming down with something, like he might have a cold. When he was just kind of like talking, you could tell his voice was kind of strained, almost like, you know, just a little nasally, maybe, and a little bit raspy, too. Not dogging on the guy at all. I'm just pointing out that I think he did have kind of a cold, or something like that. And the reason why I say that is because he still sounded really good. So theoretically, he would have probably sounded even better, you know, if he hadn't been dealing with that. So I'm just giving him props, really. I'm not complaining at all that he had a cold, because he still pulled it off really nicely. For the most part, his vocal cords came in through pretty clearly, though, without any raspiness. So he pulled it off, and I was really impressed with him. And all the other members of the band provide backing vocals, and they did a really good job with that, too. I mean, Warrant has always kind of had very powerful backing vocals, and they still do to this day, and so I figured that was worth pointing out too. And the guitar playing was really cool too on Eric Turner and Joey Allen's parts. Nothing super, you know, nothing to really write home about, but it was all really nice. Everything pretty much sounded as good as it could for the most part. I do think that, and this once again could be considered a nitpick, but I think Eric Turner's guitar was turned down a little too low. It was kind of hard to hear him playing some of the times. Once again, I think that's because, for the most part, he's more of a rhythm guitarist. And then maybe, like, the guitar tech forgot to turn it up during, like, his own guitar solos. That could be the case. I'm not sure. Once again, I'm kind of just nitpicking. I'm just telling you what I saw, basically. So now that we got all that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the set list. Usually I just go through the highlights of the set list, you know, the big hits and maybe a couple of the deeper tracks. This time we're just going to go through all of them. So the first song that they started out, they opened up with Down Boys, which is, I guess, one of their bigger songs. It went to like number 27 on the Billboard Hot 100, and that was also their first single off of their first album. They did a pretty good job with Down Boys, actually. I couldn't think of anything that they did wrong with Down Boys. Then they played So Damn Pretty, It Ought to Be Against the Law, which was a pretty fun song. Then they played Bed of Roses, which is a slower song, kind of a power ballad, I guess. Surprised that wasn't more of a hit. I really enjoyed that. They did a really good performance of that. Then they played You're the Only Hell Your Mama Ever Raised, which is a really fun song. They did a good job with that one. Then they played their first top 10 of the evening, which is I Saw Red. That was a really good performance as well. Then they played Big Talk, they played 32 Pennies, they played Blind Faith, which was a really good one too. Then Joey Allen had a guitar solo, that was a pretty cool guitar solo. Then they played a song called The Hole in My Wall. Yeah. And then Bonfire, Riding High, and then another top 10, Sometimes She Cries. That was a really good performance as well. It kind of seemed like everybody was getting a little tired, more so the singer, but everybody was still pretty much hitting on all cylinders, so didn't really affect them at all. But you could tell, you know, they had already been playing for about an hour or so, so of course, they're human beings, they're not robots, they were getting a little tired. Then they played the title track for their first song, Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinkin' Rich. That was a really fun one too. I don't think I had ever actually heard that before that night, and so that was a really cool one. And it drove the crowd crazy. Everybody really enjoyed that, and me included. Now, of course, you want to talk about a crowd pleaser. After that, they played Heaven, which is their biggest hit. I think that went to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. That's off their first album. That was a really, 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 really good... Oh my god, shut up. That, of course, was a very, very, very good performance. They were already really good before then, but then they just brought it up to 11, it seems like, with Heaven. Even the backing vocals, I mean, the backing vocals on the track, Heaven itself, you know, if you listen to the song, the studio version, there's some pretty powerful backing vocals, and the band did not disappoint in any way with those backing vocals. Next song they played was Uncle Tom's Cabin. I forget which album that's on. It's one of the first 2. I know that for sure. That was actually quite the crowd pleaser as well. I didn't think that people were going to be cheering for that song as much as they did. I mean, it was a pretty big song for them. It did chart on the Billboard Hot 100. I forget exactly what at. I think 78. I want to say. You know, it's more of a harder rockin' song. It kind of starts out a little quieter, kind of like almost like a, I don't want to say redneck, but you know, kind of like a, you know, a twangy kind of song, and then they really turn it up after that. I heard a bunch of ladies behind me saying this was their favorite song by them, so that was pretty cool. And they did not disappoint. It was a pretty good performance. And then the last song of the evening was Cherry Pie. Now, this is the song that I was kind of alluding to before. when I was telling you what we were going to be talking about. Um, first of all, let me just start with the performance of Cherry Pie was pretty good. All right, they did a good job with that, as they did with the rest of the show. So I don't have any problems with that. I just have a problem with the song itself. I mean, well, first of all, I'm not the biggest fan of the song. I'd much rather listen to pretty much anything else by them, except for The Hole in My Wall, probably. Those two I could really live without hearing ever again. It's not that they're bad songs, it's just they haven't really aged well. Especially when you put into consideration that the people that are playing these songs are now mostly in their 60s. And so, you know, it just, you know, it kind of becomes kind of creepy after a little bit. I know I'm 24 years old, right? So I am of the demographic. I am as old as they were when they were making these songs, basically. And so, you know, I should probably think like, oh yeah, they're talking about this. That's cool. That's awesome. You know, whatever. You know, I don't know. I guess I'm different. I don't know. My opinion doesn't really matter. I'm not the biggest fan of the song. It's not just the subject matter. I'm just not really a big fan of how it's arranged and everything. And, you know, people are going to be like, well, you make a song and see how it turns out. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. I'll be trash at it. You know, I'm not trashing the song. I'm just saying I'm not a fan of it. And so, yeah, of course, they closed the show with that song. And, yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by how well Warrant performed. Of course, the big question, would I recommend going to see Warrant? Yes, absolutely. You should definitely go see Warrant before they're not hitting on all cylinders like they are still doing. There's a lot of hair metal bands out there that have only one, maybe two original members, and they really only sound kind of halfway decent these days. Warrant is not one of those bands. I mean, they have two genuine original members and then another two members that were still there for all their albums, so they're as original as you can be, pretty much. Well, technically not, but you know what I mean. And then they have a singer who still sounds a lot like the original singer. And so, yeah, there's all things considered, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yes, I would definitely recommend seeing Warrant if you haven't already, or even if you have. You're not going to be souring any of those earlier memories. These are memories that you will also cherish alongside the old ones. They're not embarrassing in any way, shape, or form. I guess maybe just the subject matter of a couple of their songs might be kind of embarrassing. At least that's how I feel. But apparently I was the only one, because everybody else was still dancing along and singing right along to them. So I guess it only bothered me. And then I said we'll talk about Bullet Boys a little bit, so let's talk about them. It was not a great performance on Bullet Boys' behalf. Kind of just gave me a headache. I guess a couple nice things I could say is the musicians were fine. You know, the guitars, the drums, that was all fine. I don't really have any problems with that. The guitar player seemed really, really nice. They all seemed pretty nice. The lead singer, I believe the lead singer and the bass player are the only, like, original guys left in the band. The singer was kind of... He did a lot of these goofy, like, dance moves, and it just didn't look right. You know, because once again, he's of a certain age now, and, you know, he's shaking his ass and everything. I would say, me personally, I didn't think the moves were working the way that he probably feels like they work. But, I mean, nobody else seemed to really have a problem with it, so maybe they do work. Once again, this is just my own opinion. I'm speaking for myself here. I also wasn't really a fan of what he sounded like either, you know. I'm not a big Bullet Boys guy anyway. I have a couple of their albums on CD, I think. And they played, you know, the songs that you would expect Bullet Boys to sing. They really only have, like, two big songs, I guess. Nothing that charted in the top 40. They had two songs that were, like, in, like, the top 80. So there's that. They played Smooth Up in Ya, and they played For the Love of Money and Hang On St. Christopher. Those are probably their biggest three songs, I would say. So anyway, when it comes to Bullet Boys, I could kind of take them or leave them. You know, it was what it was. It was entertaining. I'll put it that way. You know, it's like, I don't regret seeing them or anything like that. It was entertaining. It was a little, I would say, kind of embarrassing on the singer's behalf. And mainly, not even because of the way he sounded, it was really just those dance moves that he was doing. He danced better than I could. So there's that. You know, at least it takes guts to go up there and start shaking your ass as a man, you know, in front of a couple thousand people. That's another thing that I wanted to mention. Warrant seems to be one of those bands that could actually still fill up some pretty sizable venues. Not big venues per se, but some, you know, medium-sized venues for sure. Because a lot of bands like Warrant end up going to, like, casinos and stuff like that. You know, places that have like 1,000 capacity, sometimes less, like 700 capacity, 500 capacity. But this particular place that they went to in Jefferson City was called the Capital Region Amphitheater. Of course, everything's owned by something. It's all just, you know, marketing now. But anyway, and I believe the capacity for that is about 2,500, and they seemed to fill it up. There was at least 2,000 people there. That's what it seemed like anyway. So, good for them. Granted, they did have an opener, which always helps out a little bit, usually. Then again, maybe some of the other bands can too, but they just don't take the chance. I'm not sure. Maybe casinos are just easier to rent out. I imagine that's probably what it is. They're probably easier to rent out. They're cheaper to rent out. You know, I don't know. I've never really looked into it. That's just something that I've noticed, though. People like, you know, Great White and Slaughter and, you know, Quiet Riot, they all go to, like, casinos, but then Warrant could actually fill up some smaller arenas and amphitheaters. So, it's just a thing that I've noticed. Another thing, I bought a shirt, which I thought was really, really cool. I think they could have done better, but the main thing that I'm disappointed at is that they didn't have a tour shirt. As you can see, this is just blank. Nothing on the back. Kind of sucks. $40, typical price of a tour shirt these days. I also bought here it is, a signed photo sheet, which I thought was really cool. I also got a guitar pick. Now the guitar pick's really cool looking. There's that, and then they have the signature of one of them on the back. It's just printed on there, you know. But that's a really cool looking guitar pick, and I only have a few of those. I have one from Slaughter and another one from Tom Kiefer, which is the lead singer and maybe the lead guitarist of Cinderella. So that's pretty cool. Sorry, I know I just flipped my hair. I try not to do that on camera, but sometimes it gets the best of me. You know what I mean? Anyway, so yeah, it was a really good show. I recommend anybody who's into this kind of music, definitely go see Warrant while they're still not embarrassing. Not even in the slightest. They sound a lot better than probably 90% of the hair metal bands that I've seen. I just want to thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for those notifications. We also have super chats. I am monetized now, so you could hit me with a super chat, just like $1, $2, whatever you want to do. You don't have to do any of that though. Just watching this video is really enough for me, and I appreciate you all the same. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you later. Steph signing off.